Aloha and welcome. This is a special Pulls and Pickups. Not just because it's Christmas, but I got a bunch of gifts. And those gifts were Captain America. Yes, Captain Frickin' America. I got a bunch of issues to cover, a bunch of stories that I've read, and a few that I haven't read for specific reasons that I want to talk about, more than just why I picked them up, but explain what these issues are, my thoughts on them, and if you should read them as well. There's a lot to cover, as you can see here, just so much here, going over the Bloodstone story arc, a bit of Streets of Rage, which I've already talked about in the past. I love, but I got issues of those, some doubles and such, and stuff involving Snake Hunt, a annual, as you saw at the very beginning, and more covered in this episode of Pulls and Pickups. Let's dive right into it. I know what you want to hear about first. This is part of the Terminus factor. This is part 1 of 5. There's 5 annuals and issues. I believe they're all annuals that tie into that tie into this story arc that goes between all of them, involving this. It starts out here. Yes, it starts out as a weird mutant alien bacteria, so to speak, and this creature eventually evolves out of this, and it progresses as you go through the different annuals here. So we're at Captain America Annual 9, but there's also Iron Man Annual 11, Mighty Thor Annual, Avengers West Coast Annual, and Avengers Annual 19. But you can read this and still get a very compelling and enjoyable ride. It's 64 pages, as you can see here. I love this cover, and each one is very much its own thing. Starting off with the first story here, I love the art from the time, and the person that specifically did this, the art here is by Jim Valentino, and the actual art, the drawings themselves, but the inker is Sam De La Rosa. So, both of those are pretty well known. The art's good for sure, and it fits with the time. I slightly enjoy the art done by others. What was it? Mark Grunwald and Company. He's the writer, but his various artists that he mostly had during his runs, I prefer. I can get to the actual names that I always forget when we actually get to those issues, but nonetheless, this was still well done, quite a bit. Well done enough throughout the art, and I think it's a different artist in the other stories. I remember liking the art in some of the later stories. There's 3 in total here, slightly better, but and here we get the beginning of the Terminus factor. This goo, this bacteria from space crash lands into this volcano and is dropped in there. Captain America and company basically fall into this volcano. What exactly? I forget what causes them to actually fall, but the gist is that once they, where is it here? So below, they fly in there purposefully. I believe to drop it in, yes, and they can't get out. There's a malfunction involving their ship, and Iron Man just so happens to be nearby on an excavation, and he has to turn into Iron Man. I don't know why I keep saying Captain America. Has to transform into Iron Man, duck behind the bushes, conspicuously. I can't talk today, and has to dive in and save Cap. Goes in there, does what he can, and you get to hear some jargon about his suit being able to survive and resist the heat, basically, but only for a brief period of time, and this brief window is all he has to save everybody. So he brings the ship to the surface, but has to fly away real quick to cool down, and during that time, Steve Rogers hops out and saves the agent there. She's been knocked out, seemingly, I think, from the warmth, if I remember correctly. Women, no. No, not really. But unbeknownst to them, the alien virus thing, I don't remember how it even came into the picture, but nonetheless, this alien virus thing hops back out of the shuttle that it was originally in and dives into a nearby stream. And eventually, through a series of events, causes chaos of all sorts. It travels through the water stream, infects the fish, infects the bear that eats the fish, and eventually is taken back to a gathering that both Iron Man and Captain America happen to stop at on their way down from the mountainside, basically. And this infected fish that's fed to them causes the people, including Tony Stark himself, to begin to lash out violently. So Cap and his shield agent, I forget if it's Miss Carter or who it is, and they basically have to piece together the mystery and stop the onslaught of raid goers. There you go. That's picnic goers. So it's a fun action-packed ride. It's short because there's short in the sense it's only like 20 pages, this 64-page annual. You're not getting a whole lot per story, but you're getting enjoyable stories for each. And this one's no different. The art I didn't think was fantastic. I thought it could have been a bit better, but it was still very fluid, which I think is really the main plus with this. I think the way the characters are drawn, I'm not as used to compared to what I previously had read. And I think the coloring itself could be a bit more dynamic, but it's all very solidly done. I'm only saying that it's a few pegs down from what I prefer. It's a few pegs to the side. It's a little different from what I'm used to, but particularly I think because you're seeing such an action-packed issue, I think the main thing that Macchiana, what was his name? Jim Valentino, there you go. I think what Valentino brings to this actually might fit better with the story than what I'm used to in terms of just like the muscle work and such, because things are very fluid in their motion. And Iron Man is a very fluid fighter. Both are, sure, but I mean, Iron Man flies through the air while fighting, and that very much lends to the design and such. But nonetheless, it's a fun issue, and there's not really too much else to say outside of that. Technically, I guess, ends on a cliffhanger, but really we get to see how this Terminus virus thing basically progresses and evolves into some giant creature that's eventually going to have to be fought by the Avengers crew in, what is it? In Avengers Annual 19. So maybe I'll cover that in a future episode here. But nonetheless, this next story, a soldier story, a soldier story is a lot of fun. We basically start out with a friend of Captain America doing a speech, and through various events, a terrorist comes aboard and tries to take him out. After this, a longtime general and friend of Captain America is shot and bleeding out. He goes into basically a coma, and while being taken care of in a doctor's office, he relives the events of how he met Captain America and eventually led the World War II soldiers that, were occupying, Nazi ground at the time, how they eventually, rose to help, stop the Red Skull, or, more realistically in the original issues back in the 40s, there was more than just the Red Skull, but there was frickin' Hitler that they had to stop. But they just are talking about the Red Skull in this, and that makes sense. It's been so many decades since that originally happened, and people, let's just say, to keep things politically, to be politically subservient to the way the country was going at this point, and has definitely gone now, it seems as if they kind of want to not touch on the more harshness of war. But nonetheless, despite not getting into as much depth in terms of that as I had wished, the story here is still very well executed, and I love how unique it is that we're getting a glimpse into the World War II Captain America we haven't really seen. I was reading a lot of issues from around this time, the 1989, 1990 era, and even before, and throughout the 80s, we don't really, or throughout this late 80s period, we didn't see a lot of flashbacks to World War II Captain America. I mean, there were some, but the last one that I really recall in the last like 100 issues. Geez, the last one I recall actually flashing back to World War II was 298, 299, somewhere around there during the Death of Red Skull arc. There was a flashback, but other than that, it's been since between this issue and that last issue, which is the last one I recall there being a flashback. It's been like 8 years, something like that. So, or 6 years, 7 years, whatever. So the point is that we don't get to see this very often, and it's nice to see, and it's done real well here. The art is it done by Falcone, Macchiano. I always forget people's names. That's a reoccurring trope here on this show, and it seems like it's only going to continue. Nope, it's someone else. It looks like. That's inker, penciler, Mark Bagley. Yeah, it does look different. I like the art here personally better. I think certain scenes like right here, certain panels like right here, really show off the way that they use lighting to kind of illuminate people's faces, and you get the lighting here as well, where it kind of shows people's character, right? The good people. I forget what that's called. There's a real technique that's called. I forget what it is, but basically that people's faces of ones that are evil are darkened, and those that are light, those that are good, have their faces illuminated by rays of light. So anyways, and we progress basically through this World War II story. We get to see Bucky and Cap hop into the fray and help their World War II comrades. And that's about it, really. It's quite a fun issue. Oh, that I forgot one important thing that ties all this together. You think that it's kind of they're going from one story to another and it doesn't have any cohesion. There is a bit of cohesion, not a whole lot, but they all involve Cap and Tony Stark. So, or the Starks, I should say. So this is Tony Stark's father. I forget his name. Something Stark, Wayne Stark or something. I don't remember. Whatever. The point nonetheless is that he's captured by the Red Skull conveniently. And basically the reason for that is that they want to, the Red Skull and his armada want to use Stark's technology in order to continue their Nazi, to continue the Third Reich, and help, spread their Nazism, basically help win World War II. That's basically their secret weapon. And again, I would have rather have had something, tying to actual history, maybe, something about the Nazis maybe using Stark's mind to help beat the Americans in, basically the race to create an atomic weapon. I think that would have been a more interesting story than just wrapping in Stark and the armor that Stark was creating. It's very comic book like, and I get that. That's why they went for that. But seeing more ties to actual World War II is what I kind of would have preferred, because the original Captain America had more of those ties. It was still comic book like, don't get me wrong, but there was much more balls in terms of really touching on the horrors that were happening at the time. And I just kind of feel like overall, more than just this, but this kind of reflects the overall dissonance that has been growing in terms of, what happened and how people just want to, shy away from it because it makes people uncomfortable. But I think the uncomfortability and the harshness of those kinds of themes can still be portrayed in a comic book. I still feel like you can have a lighthearted comic book that touches on some harsher subjects because it's a harsh subject to begin with. I mean, it's freaking World War II. So, I think touching on that stuff would just fit with the theme much better. It's World War II after all, and that you don't have to, just because if it had those things, it wouldn't take away, I think, necessarily from the lighthearted aspects. If anything, it would make those lighthearted aspects even more pronounced and would make them even more of a levity. And on top of that, stakes would just be simply higher. Instead of body armor, I want it to be an atomic bomb, and instead of just having the Red Skull here, I want to see like, the Nazis here are very caricatures. I wanted more grit to it. Actual, gruesome soldiers. We don't really get any of that, and that's okay. it fits, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, I guess is what I'm saying. It can have both, the lighthearted, but also these more serious elements to amp up the story and make it more impactful overall, despite it involving very, disturbing subject matter. It never at all touches on that and is very, how would you say, very toned back, even for a comic book. And in that sense, although it reflects again that growing dissonance, I just feel like they could have done more there. Anywho, so there you go. Cool story for sure. And then next up, this is the final story here. We get Nomad walking the line, and this actually ties right into another video that I have coming soon, talking about the Nomad series, the Nomad independent series that I've been reading, and I definitely want to talk about later on. So check that out when that video's out. But who did the art here? Don Hudson did the pencils. Tom Morgan did the inking. Don't know either of them. Here we got ads. I always think it's interesting when they do dual layer ads. They did this I think one other time maybe in this. Overall, the annual didn't have a ton of ads, surprisingly. But especially for how long it is, it seems like they cut that down, probably because it's a more expensive issue. It was twice as much as most issues at the time, but it was twice as long, $2. It's crazy to think we've come this far, though. Only $2 for a double-sized issue. I'm going to have to make this video, this comic its own video, by the way. Have to cut out the intro. You won't know. You only know now because I'm telling you. But and Nomad basically is one person that's close to him, I believe, right, is killed. Yeah, a girl that he was tied with in some way. I don't remember exactly who it was or care. But the point is that you get some nice lighting down there. The light illuminating through the trees there, and it's basically kind of playing catch up and detailing who was killed by Nomad and how he's having a growing distaste for the superhero lifestyle. Letting people walk over him and letting villainry continue to rear its ugly head and step on the freedom that they fight for. And that he in the limited series in the ongoing series that comes only like a year or so after this, or I think is it like 1 year, something like that? Not very long after this, we see that Nomad just goes on his own and becomes his own, kind of vigilante. Even before this, however, we definitely saw that was kind of growing to become the case, where Captain America, even back in in the 330s, I think is where it was, 340s. I think it was 330s. We started to see that he really wasn't liking the way that Captain America was running things and didn't really want to be his cohort. Didn't really want to be his cohort anymore and continue to fight the way that he did. He's not necessarily becoming the Punisher, which would have been kind of hilarious and sad. But he's growing more in that direction. Frustrated with the superhero lifestyle and not enacting enough. He feels that superheroes like Captain America don't enact enough force and aren't taking their job seriously enough, and that's why villainry continues to just basically seemingly get worse. And through this, he learns. Through this, he learns that a family house that he breaks into, not too far away, he sees that a criminal is at the funeral. He goes to the family of the criminal in hopes to catch the guy, I believe. I think so. It's been been about a week since I read this, something like that. I've been behind trying to do these videos here, but and other living my life. But from what I remember, he goes into their house, sees that the family's there and the guy is not there, and learns that despite his monologue inside his head and the way he's talking about these criminals need to be taught a lesson and all this kind of stuff, he learns that the guy was simply a family man and that he kept to his own. When he came in, the family didn't seem to be bothered by. They got in a talk, and they're not necessarily bothered by the criminality that's in their family, and they get into kind of a discussion that makes Nomad reflect on his thoughts that he had previously about cracking down on crime and giving these criminals leaving them in bloody, and teaching them a lesson, and that's the real way to stop crime. But through this, he kind of learns that the family doesn't view any of these things as, they view it as the way it is. It's just a byproduct of how their life is, and that they don't think that he's necessarily a bad guy, which is interesting and kind of tries to add sympathy and reflect a level of reality to, reflect a bit of reality back into the face of Nomad and what he was thinking previously. But nonetheless, he still feels as if he can't continue letting things go the way that they are, and that the only way to stop the law breaking is to break the law himself. That was what I was going to say. There you go. To be continued in the Nomad series by Fabian Inchia. I can't even read. Is there an I? It's hard to see from so far away. Nikiza and James Fry III, on sale in September from Marvel. Oh, so it is this year, September. What year was this? 1990? Okay, so it does continue after. What? Okay, whatever. Nonetheless, then it does continue, and we're going to cover that in one of the next videos. 2-3 videos from now, going to cover a bunch of issues. I have almost all the series, so wait until then. I'll cover the rest of these issues later on. Thanks for watching, and aloha.